When you get emotionally triggered, the instinct to react immediately can feel almost impossible to fight. Your body tightens, your heart rate rises, and your mind races to defend itself. It's like your system goes into automatic mode: fight, flight, or freeze. That's why the first and most powerful move you can make is to pause before you push back. Because that pause isn't weakness. It's not backing down. It's actually the strongest, smartest thing you can do when emotions are trying to take over. That pause buys you space. And in that space, you get your control back. You stop the reaction from becoming regret. Think about how many times you've said something in the heat of the moment that didn't sound like you. You walk away thinking, why did I say that? Or, that's not what I meant. The problem wasn't your message, it was your timing. When emotions are high, logic is low. You can't communicate clearly from a state of chaos. So the pause is your reset button. It's that moment you decide not to match energy, not to mirror anger, not to make it worse. You're choosing not to give away your peace just to win a point. You're choosing to protect your calm because that's where your clarity lives. Pausing doesn't mean you don't care or that you're avoiding conflict. It means you care enough about the relationship and about yourself to not let your emotions do the talking. The pause is not silence from weakness. It's silence from strength. It's a moment of emotional self-defense. You're saying, I need a second to catch my breath, to get my head back before I open my mouth. And that second makes all the difference. It shifts the conversation from reactive to responsive. It stops the emotional wildfire before it burns something you can't rebuild. When you pause, your nervous system starts to regulate again. Your breathing slows, your muscles loosen, and your brain starts to re-engage the logical part that went offline. That's when you can actually think about what's really going on. What was said that triggered you? Why did it sting so much? Is this about the moment or about something deeper that got touched? Without the pause, you'll never know because you'll be too busy reacting instead of reflecting. The pause gives you that emotional oxygen. It's how you stay grounded when everything inside you wants to explode. The hardest part of pausing is that your ego hates it. It wants to prove a point, to defend, to win. But emotional maturity is about choosing peace over power. You don't need to prove you're right in the moment to know that you are. You don't need to match their tone to show your strength. Real control isn't about dominating the room. It's about not letting the room dominate you. The pause is your boundary. It says, I'm not going to speak from anger. I'm going to speak from awareness. And that difference changes everything. So the next time you feel triggered, don't rush to respond. Pause, breathe, let the wave pass. Remind yourself that you're not your emotion. You're the observer of it. The emotion is temporary. Your words, your reactions, your tone, they're what last. Give yourself the space to make a choice, not a reaction, because the moment you pause, you've already won. You've broken the cycle that turns hurt into harm. You've shown yourself that you're capable of staying calm even when it's hard. And that's where real power lives, not in the argument, but in the quiet moment where you choose not to add to it. When you get emotionally triggered, it's not always obvious what's actually happening inside you. You just feel a rush, tight chest, fast heart, maybe anger, sadness, or shame, but you can't quite name it. And that's the problem. When you don't identify the emotion, it runs the show. That's why naming what you're feeling is one of the most powerful emotional tools you have. It sounds simple, but it's not easy. Because when you're triggered, your instinct is to defend, not to diagnose. Yet the moment you can say, I'm angry, I feel rejected, or I'm hurt, something shifts. You go from being in the emotion to observing it. And once you can observe it, you can manage it. Emotions lose power when you bring them into the light. Think about it. When you name an emotion, you separate your identity from it. You're no longer saying, I am angry. You're saying, I'm feeling anger. That small change gives you distance, and in that distance is control. You stop reacting from the emotion and start responding to it. It's the difference between drowning in a wave and watching it rise and fall from the shore. When you name what's happening inside, you're giving your logical brain a chance to catch up with your emotional brain. You're reminding yourself this feeling isn't forever. It's just information. And that's the key. Emotions are information. They're not facts and they're not commands. They're signals pointing to something deeper that needs attention. Anger might be signaling a boundary that was crossed. Sadness might be pointing to loss or disappointment. Guilt might be showing you that your actions didn't align with your values. When you name it, you get curious instead of critical. You ask yourself, why is this feeling here? What is it trying to tell me? That kind of curiosity helps you respond with wisdom instead of impulse. You stop seeing emotions as enemies to suppress and start seeing them as messages to understand. The challenge is that most of us were never taught how to do this. We grew up being told to calm down, don't cry, or toughen up. So when emotions come up, we either explode or shut down. But emotional naming is the middle path. It's emotional awareness in action. You don't have to overanalyze or justify what you feel. You just have to notice it and name it. It's like turning on the light in a dark room. Suddenly, what felt overwhelming becomes manageable. You can work with it instead of against it. You can say, okay, I feel disrespected right now, instead of acting out in anger that doesn't make sense to anyone else. Naming your emotions also changes how others experience you. When you can articulate what's going on inside, you communicate with clarity instead of confusion. You can say, I'm not angry at you, I just feel overwhelmed, or I felt dismissed when you said that. That level of honesty invites connection instead of conflict. People stop guessing what's wrong and start understanding you. And when they understand you, it's easier to resolve what's really happening. It's no longer about proving a point, it's about being understood. So the next time you get triggered, pause and ask yourself, what am I actually feeling right now? Don't judge the answer, just notice it. Give it a name, because the moment you do, you take the emotion out of the driver's seat. You regain your power to choose how you show up. Emotional awareness is not about being soft. It's about being smart. It's knowing yourself so deeply that no trigger can control you. Once you can name what's happening inside, you stop fighting your emotions and start leading them. And that's when you begin to respond with clarity, confidence, and calm, no matter what comes your way. When you get emotionally triggered, your body reacts before your mind can even catch up. Your heart rate spikes, your breathing gets shallow, and your nervous system flips into survival mode. You might not realize it, but in that moment, your brain is flooded with chemicals that make clear thinking nearly impossible. That's why trying to have a calm, rational conversation while you're triggered never works. You can't connect with someone else when you're disconnected from yourself. That's where the idea of regulating before you relate comes in. It means you have to calm your internal storm before you try to communicate. Because when you're calm, you can connect. When you're chaotic, you just collide. Regulation isn't about suppressing what you feel. It's not pretending you're fine or bottling up your emotions. It's about giving your nervous system time to settle so you can respond with intention instead of instinct. That might mean taking a few deep breaths, stepping out of the room, or simply saying, I need a second. It sounds small, but those few moments can completely change the outcome of a situation. You're not running away from the problem. You're getting grounded enough to face it wisely. It's emotional maintenance, not emotional avoidance. You're taking responsibility for your state before you try to repair something with someone else. When you regulate first, you stop adding fuel to the fire. You're no longer reacting from the wound, you're responding from awareness. Think about how many conversations have gone wrong because both people were triggered, talking over each other, defending instead of listening. No one's hearing anything because no one's regulated. That's how small disagreements turn into big blow-ups. But if even one person chooses to take a step back and breathe, the whole tone can shift. Calm is contagious. When you stay grounded, you make it safe for others to do the same. You lead with composure instead of chaos. There are simple ways to regulate that don't require hours of meditation or deep therapy sessions. It's about small, practical actions that remind your body you're safe. Take a slow breath in through your nose, hold it for a second, and let it out slowly through your mouth. Feel your feet on the ground, loosen your shoulders, sometimes even noticing what's around you. The temperature of the air, the sounds in the room can bring you back to the present, because triggers pull you into the past or push you into fear of the future. Regulation brings you back to now, and in the now, you have choices. you have control. The truth is, emotional regulation is not something you do once. It's something you practice daily. The more you train your body to calm down in stressful moments, the faster it learns to do it automatically. It becomes muscle memory for your mind. You start noticing when you're escalating, and instead of letting it spiral, you can catch it. That's how you build emotional strength, not by avoiding discomfort, but by learning to stay steady through it. Every time you regulate instead of react, you're teaching your nervous system that it doesn't need to panic every time it feels tension. You're building resilience. So the next time you feel that emotional surge, don't rush to talk or explain. Pause and regulate first. Remind yourself that you can't pour calm into a conversation if you don't have any. Breathe, step back, ground yourself, because once you're regulated, everything else gets easier. You can listen, you can empathize, and you can respond from a place that actually solves the problem instead of making it worse. Regulation is the bridge between emotion and communication. It's how you move from being reactive to being responsive. And that's what emotional intelligence really looks like in real life. When you get emotionally triggered, your mind immediately jumps to a story. Someone says something that hurts, and before you even realize it, you've filled in all the blanks. They don't respect me. They're trying to embarrass me. I'm not good enough. That story becomes the lens you see the moment through, and it dictates how you react. But here's the truth. Your emotions aren't always reacting to reality. They're reacting to your interpretation of it. That's why it's so important to shift from reaction to reflection. When you reflect, you pause long enough to ask, what story am I telling myself right now? That question changes everything because it separates what happened from what you think it means. Reaction happens fast. Reflection takes awareness. Reaction is automatic. It's the human way of protecting ourselves from pain or rejection. But reflection is intentional. It's the mature way of understanding where that pain is really coming from. Most of the time, the trigger isn't about the moment in front of you. It's about something much older, deeper, and unresolved. Maybe it reminds you of a time you weren't heard or a person who made you feel small. So when that same emotion shows up, you don't just react to the present moment, you react to the past that's tied to it. Reflection helps you see that pattern. It helps you realize that not every emotional alarm means there's real danger. Sometimes it just means an old wound got poked. When you shift into reflection, you step out of your emotional story and into your awareness. You begin to notice your thoughts instead of being driven by them. You can say, I feel dismissed right now, but is that true? Or is it my fear talking? That kind of self-inquiry doesn't weaken you, it grounds you. It puts you back in control of your response. It allows you to see that maybe the other person wasn't attacking you. Maybe they were just expressing something clumsily, or maybe they were having a bad day. Reflection gives you room for perspective, and perspective gives you peace. Because when you're reflecting, you're not reacting, you're learning. The power of reflection is that it turns emotional chaos into emotional clarity. Instead of being swept away by the intensity of what you feel, you start understanding why you feel it. And that understanding is what prevents regret. You stop saying things you don't mean or doing things you wish you hadn't. You slow the process down just enough to make choices that align with your values, not your triggers. Reflection doesn't erase your emotions. It refines them. It allows you to express what you feel without letting it control you. You start showing up not from your wound, but from your wisdom. It's also worth remembering that reflection doesn't mean overthinking. You're not spiraling in, why did this happen? Or what if I'm wrong? You're simply checking your perception before you react. It's the difference between judgment and curiosity. Judgment says, they're wrong and I'm right. Curiosity says, why did that affect me so much? That question opens the door to growth because every emotional trigger carries information about where you still need healing. Reflection helps you hear that message instead of silencing it with anger or defensiveness. When you get curious instead of combative, you start seeing emotional triggers not as threats, but as teachers. So the next time you feel triggered, stop and ask yourself what story you're telling. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it the full picture? The moment you step into reflection, you take your power back from the emotion. You stop letting your mind write a story of pain when the situation might just need understanding. Reflection builds awareness, and awareness builds control. The more you practice it, the calmer and clearer you become, no matter what's happening around you. Because reflection is not about changing the situation, it's about changing the way you see it. And once you do that, no trigger can own you again. Once you've paused, named your emotions, and regulated yourself, there comes a moment of choice, the moment you decide how to respond. That's where emotional maturity shows up, in how you use your words once you've regained control. Responding with intention instead of impulse means you're not speaking from pain, but from clarity. It's not about being perfect, it's about being present. The goal isn't to win the argument or prove a point, it's to move the moment forward without losing yourself in it. Because when emotions lead, the outcome is chaos, but when intention leads, the outcome is growth. Responding with intention starts with slowing down your communication. You're not reacting to every word that was said. You're choosing your words carefully to reflect what's true for you. That's the difference between defensiveness and dialogue. When you respond intentionally, you're thinking about the result you want, not just the relief of being heard. It's easy to let frustration, sarcasm, or blame sneak into your tone when you're emotional, but that only builds walls. Intention builds bridges. You don't need to sound strong or superior. You just need to sound real. You can say, I felt hurt when that happened, instead of, you always do this. One opens the door to understanding, the other closes it. It's important to remember that your response isn't just about managing the other person. It's about managing yourself. You can't control what someone says, but you can always control how you show up. And that control is your peace. When you respond with intention, you're not letting someone else dictate your emotional temperature. You decide how calm